Hello and welcome. You're watching Share Talk. I'm Charlie Gibson, and joining me in the studio today from Katoro are the company's chairman, Louis Coetzee, and its consultant, Christian Schaffalitzky. Gentlemen, very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. South African, Irishman, and two Irishmen actually. I hesitate to think that we could talk about rugger for a very long time, but we probably could.
Yeah, as I said, I'm more than willing to talk about it.
But let's talk about Katoro, since that's what we're here to talk about. Now, my understanding is Katoro comprises the gold and nickel assets of Kibo Energy. Is that a fair starting point?
Well, that's how it originally was. Both these projects used to be in Kibo before, and Kibo at one point had to make a decision whether it wants to continue as a resources company or as an energy company. We made the choice that it's going to become an energy company, and then subsequently both the nickel and the gold was vended into Katoro Gold, where it found its home and where we are developing it today.
Okay, so just describe to me what the major assets are, how you're taking them forward.
Well, at the moment we have the Imweru and Lubondu gold projects in Katoro, which is a combined resource of about 750,000 ounces gold. And then we have the...
So for those of us who don't know where Katoro is...
That's in the northwest, close to Gator, in the very well-known Lake Victoria gold area, and very close to the Gator gold mine, which I think...
So Lake Victoria gold fields.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So 750,000 ounces, give or take, up there in gold.
That's correct. And then we have the Haneti nickel project, which is the one that we actually want to talk about today, and which Christian was the original visionary who found it and who saw the potential in that, and which we believe holds the potential to be a world-class deposit. And that is in the central part of the country, close just northeast of Dodoma, the capital of Tanzania.
Okay, we will get on to Haneti, I promise you, but let me just ask you about the strategy of nickel and gold. Are they a natural grouping?
Well, at the moment, this is more a legacy situation than anything else. So this is how the projects were vended into Katoro. I think we've also recently announced that we are in the process of disposing of the gold project at the moment. That's not come to fruition yet, but there is announcements out on that at the moment. And the nickel is there, where we have also announced that we are looking at converting Katoro more into energy metals orientation or energy metals focus. Although the two doesn't exclude each other, and they do fit well in terms of the country and jurisdiction as it stands at the moment. But the focus is more on gradually diversifying the portfolio into energy-orientated metals.
So is that because Haneti has a cobalt byproduct credit, or when you say you're diversifying into energy metals, and you've got nickel, which is increasingly seen as an energy metal, is there a cobalt byproduct, or are you, when you say that, are you talking about something else?
I mean, at the same time, I also must add that the Haneti portfolio in its own right holds the potential for PGMs, it holds the potential for nickel, it holds the potential for lithium. It also has some good gold potential, which complements the Lake Victoria project that we have at this point in time. So there's a lot of potential in the overall portfolio.
Okay, but when we as investors, when we think of Katoro, we should be thinking of nickel, is that right? That's the major thing. The gold field, the gold assets out there, they're probably going to be spun off from what you say.
Yeah. Well, that's the plan at the moment. That's how we look at it at the moment. Things always change, as you know, in resources companies, but that's where the focus is at the moment. It's on the nickel project.
So, you better describe it to me.
Well, I think the person better positioned to describe it from a geological point of view is actually Christian.
Christian, you describe it to us.
Sure. Over 10 years ago, myself and Richard Spear, who I think deserves a mention as the real visionary here. Richard Spear was a 20-year experienced geologist in Tanzania, and he had learnt an awful lot about the country over that period, and he had selected this as an unfinished business project. One of those things where you've been looking and there's definitely nickel there. And in fact, when we went first, one of the sites we visited was at one of our project sites at Mihanza Hill, where there is artisanal working on chrysoprase. Now, I didn't really know, to be honest, what chrysoprase was till I saw it. But basically, it's a gemstone of nickel. And the locals basically sell it for gemstone purposes. It's a very pretty kind of greenish white mineral, which polishes up very nicely. And so we did some initial work, and we were very encouraged by a grab sample from weathered rock, not laterite. That's, if we go into detailed geology, I can expand, but basically it wasn't laterite. Weathered bedrock of about just over 13% nickel and 2.5 grams per tonne PGMs. Now that's not
Normal.
That's not normal. Correct. I'm glad you summarised it for me. And basically that encouraged us a lot. And since then, of course, we've carried out a lot of surface work, being ground geophysics, using the airborne to orient us. We've staked 70 kilometres of strike on the potential geology. The geology, if I can be just a bit technical for a minute, are ultramafic rocks, sometimes called chonoliths, which are a typical host for this type of nickel mineralisation as sulphide. And it's sulphide nickel we're looking for. And
that's important, isn't it? Because it's much easier to process.
Yes, exactly. And the infrastructure is, shall we say, not too bad. In fact, Tanzania is known to have a lot of nickel. Some of it, unfortunately, is stranded. But, for instance, there is the project in northwestern Tanzania, which is 58 million tonnes of 2.5% held by Glencore and Barrick, and that project remains in development. So we know that that our project is in the right geology. And so we have ground geophysics, we have geochemistry, and all of it suggests we need to drill. And believe it or not, because funds have been so tight for exploration, we've not managed to drill it, even 10 years later. So that's what we're going to do now. That's where we're finally there, ready to go on 2 very good targets, but still within mind that we have 70 kilometres of strike still to explore.
And you got the money since you bought up drilling, or you need to raise the money?
Well, we are busy with the first phase, the preparatory work for this, and then we will make a further judgment call at that time when we see the results from that, which we believe and hope, based on what we've seen in the past, will give us the results that we want to do. So for what we need to do right now, we are in a good position to carry on with that work.
Do we know how much drilling, thousands of metres, that we need to do?
After this first stage, we'll make that final call in terms of what the true extent of an expanded resource drill program will be.
Okay, and when are you going to make? I mean, roughly when do you expect to make that announcement? Before Christmas, after Christmas, January?
That'll definitely not be this side of in this or during this year. Still, there's still a lot of work that we need to do.
Okay, so but early next year, investors might expect to see an announcement. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think it all depends on how quickly we can finish what we're busy doing now and carry on with that, because it is also the raining season now in Tanzania, which makes it a little bit more difficult to carry on with exploration work and to get work done. So it all depends on how quickly we can. It depends on to what extent the weather allows us to continue with work, and how quickly we can turn it around.
Deep, shallow.
Well,
what are we looking at?
We don't expect it to be that deep because it's weathered bedrock. If we were looking at the laterite profile, which you have elsewhere in Tanzania, you could be up to 100 metres of cover in rock types. But actually, we have none. We're basically sitting on weathered bedrock. So we are optimistic that we don't have to go very deep in the first test drill holes.
When you think of Africa, you don't always think of nickel. Think of lots of other things, but nickel tends to be in other places of the world. And I can think of nickel mines in Africa. I can think of nickel sulphides, but I would say it doesn't have the history that other mining has there. So, is this an exception? How do we look at this, or is this part of a belt that just has never been properly explored?
Yeah, I mean, basically, there are many, if you like, potential mines in nickel, laterite, and sulphide in Tanzania. And in Uganda, for instance, where an Australian company is exploring and has had very encouraging results, good drill holes, early drill hole results. In Botswana, you had the old Palladium and Gold refinery and mines attached to that. So it's not entirely unknown. I suppose mostly exploration for base metals tends to follow, in historical terms, tends to follow gold or precious metal exploration in general. And I think that we're now seeing that, really organised phase of exploration following up on, if you like, the development of infrastructure in Africa now.
I know you don't have a choice as to where you put your deposit, where you put your mine. Tanzania has had a bit of bad press in the last few years, mostly relating to African Barrick, which became Acacia, and then there was the concentrate ban. Could that affect you in any way?
I don't know what Louis thinks, but I think the country has improved a lot since those events. We have no historical baggage, basically.
No, I have to agree with it. We've seen over the last couple of months in particular that the situation is improving. I think the way in which the whole Barrick dispute has been resolved is testimony to that as well. And in our own situation, we've just, on the Kibo side, just received 7 mining rights a month or two ago after a very short process after the final submission of those mining rights. So we're certainly seeing an improvement in the overall climate and approach.
So I'm right in thinking, am I, that you don't have a resource yet?
No, we haven't even drilled yet.
No, right. Okay. So in terms of timelines, when assuming we get to January, you decide how much drilling you want to do. The budget is there for you to be able to do it. What is the next major catalyst? When might we expect to see A, drill results, and B, perhaps exploration targets, resources? What timelines are we looking at?
Well, I mean, and Christian should also come in on this, but it's a very careful process that we follow. Nickel exploration is something that you have to be very, very careful in how you approach it, because it can become very expensive. So what we're trying to do at the moment is to be very precise and as clinical as we can in terms of the selection of targets. So we've already identified 2 primary targets, which are really good exploration targets as we see them. But we want to do a little bit more work, a little bit more investigative work to understand exactly how we should approach them once we attack them with a proper drill program. And that's something that's the part that we're working on at the moment. And it's a bit difficult to say how quickly we can finish that and how quickly we can complete that. But that will inform the ultimate expanded drill program that we have for either one or both these targets.
So if I was to look for an analogue, would it be Serious Resources? Could it be Serious Resources in Australia? Fraser Range? You know what I'm getting at?
Well, I'm picking something a bit earlier stage, which is the Australian company I mentioned in Uganda. And there they drilled a few holes, I'm not sure how many at the stage where they got a joint venture with Rio Tinto, but it was very early. And Rio Tinto have committed to spending $57 million to earn 75% interest plus $2 million in equity. So you can see that even early drill results on a project like ours, could be a real leg up for the company.
And then you mentioned Rio Tinto there. Do you think that your development plan to drill something up, farm it out, sell it, go on to the next project, or would you look to take this into production?
Now I go back to Louis' covering statement, which is basically saying that we know that we have 70 kilometres of strike. We know we have 2 excellent drill targets. I mean, the ones we've been trying to drill but didn't have the cash for some time. And, we can't just farm it out on the back of the first 2 drill holes, would be my view. The rest of the belt has to be properly checked first.
So, go on, Louis, you were going to say.
No, I just wanted to tie into that. The one thing that we should be very careful is to get ahead of ourselves in how we approach this. There's a lot of work that has been done on this project in the past, although we've not been able to drill it, as Christian has indicated. But we know and understand a lot of this project, and we have the benefit that we can actually approach it to make sure that we get the best bang for the buck, as they say, and make sure that we demonstrate that value in a very very positive and attractive manner.
So I always like asking this. In, let's say, 3-4 years, where do you think you might be? In your wildest dreams, everything goes right.
Well, I mean, it's always very difficult to make that statement, or to do it. But if we have to look at the potential that we see there, and if the results keep on confirming what we suspect this to be, then this is potentially a world-class deposit. And as Christian said just now, can be a completely company transformer. But it's all predicated on continued positive exploration results.
That's in your wildest dreams. You're allowed to have good exploration results.
That's what I'm saying. If we accept what we've seen so far and the indicators that we've seen, I mean, 13% nickel and 2.5 grams PGMs. It's you don't find those anomalies just underneath
It was quite startling.
Yeah,
really.
So the potential is definitely there. The indicators are there. We've got a bit of work to do to firm that up and to confirm it. But if we rely on what we've seen so far, it truly does have the potential to be a company maker and transformer of Katoro.
For those investors who think nickel, think Tanzania, they might think African Eagle from years gone by, which was not such a success story as it turned out. How would you differentiate yourself from them?
I think it's more on a geological level. That was primarily a laterite.
100%.
And we're not going after laterite. We're certainly going for sulphide, which makes it completely different, a totally different approach, totally different animal altogether.
All right, so no similarities at all. So
No.
investors don't need to think Tanzania, nickel, oh, I remember this. Is it going to be the same? Because it's not even the same starting point.
It's completely different.
The capital costs are much higher for laterite, and also the infrastructure you require to support a project of that size. I mean, 100 million tonnes of laterite is great if you've got everything on site, but it's not the case. So.
Yeah, the other thing also, maybe just the last thing, just as an afterthought, we've also seen a lot of development in the central part of the country lately. So from an infrastructure point of view, we've seen the whole capital actually move. It's always been Dodoma, but the real capital was actually in Dar es Salaam. That has moved now to Dodoma. And there's a lot of infrastructure investment in and around Dodoma, and we just outside of Dodoma, so that will benefit us as well.
Since I'm thinking about it now, big chunks of Tanzania are national parks. You're not in one or near one or...
No, not with this one, no, definitely not. That's actually more towards the north of us, and then of course in the far south. Where we are, there's none of that.
Excellent. All right, excellent, gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed. We wish you the best of luck. Come back, tell us how it's going. Let us know. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Louis Coetzee, the chairman of Katoro, joined by his consultant, Christian Schaffalitzky. I'm afraid that's all we got time for. Many congratulations to Louis for getting through an entire interview without mentioning the Rugby World Cup on one single occasion. Remarkable and much appreciated from a South African. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today, but go and look up Katoro. You can buy the shares now for just under a penny. Earlier this year, you could have bought them for about a third of that price, so you would have had about a 3 times uplift from then until now, as the Americans say. I'll let you do the math. We'll be back soon with more such opportunities in the world of investing very shortly, we hope. And meanwhile, this is me, Charlie Gibson, signing off from Share Talk, and until then, you have a very capital day.